legal authority were you guys working under, and will there be an after report on the strike?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be an after report. I mean, the legal authority, and I want to talk about these kids, is that there are people who are bringing literal terrorists who are bringing deadly drugs into our country, and the President of the United States ran on a promise of stopping this poison from coming into our country. Another question?
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. The President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison, and under President Trump, those days are over.
So I said a couple of days ago, when Trump conducted a military strike against Tren de Aragua, that liberals were going to go out and start defending the so-called due process rights of these drug cartel members and international narco-terrorists, basically repeating the Kilmar Abrego Garcia playbook all over again. But I have to be honest, when I said that, I was half joking, right? Not that it's not a serious point, not that it's not something liberals would say, but I was also to an extent trying to satirize the liberal position. Turns out it was not satire, because in the days since Trump finally used the US military to actually defend American citizens in our own hemisphere, we now have liberals going out and screaming about the due process rights, supposedly, of these international terrorists, which is completely ironic. I don't even want to say it's hypocritical. It's just dishonest. The theme you, I guess, overall seeing here is when Obama and other liberal administrations do 1 million bombings and drone strikes against terrorist organizations in the Middle East, that's fine. But when it's actually done in our own hemisphere to a terrorist organization that is actively threatening and killing hundreds of thousands of Americans a year through, the narco-terrorism, frankly, that they're conducting, suddenly now it's a problem, right? And I want to make it clear, this is the crux of the issue. It's not about due process or civil liberties. The Democrat Party could care less about these things. It is just simply the fact that our armed forces are actually being used to defend our homeland. When things are designed to benefit Americans, when Trump uses something like the military, the Department of War, the national security apparatus, whatever you want to call it, to protect our own people, suddenly then it is a problem for the Democrat Party. So in today's video, I want to react and show you some of the utterly ridiculous influencers and their hot takes on how it's actually a total violation of norms to strike a terrorist organization using presidential powers, as well as J.D. Vance's response to one of these idiotic influencers who goes by the name of Brian Krassenstein. So we'll get into it. We'll tell you all about it. We'll show you some of the ridiculous statements these people are making. But first, though, guys, do us a favor as usual. If you enjoy our content, make sure hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are very close to 500K subscribers. Help us get there. Hit that red button. And with that said, you can just see the opinions right here. So here's one example, because after I said it as a joke, the liberals didn't take it as a joke, and they're now literally just saying this. So, of course, after Trump conducts the strike on Tren de Aragua in international waters, you have this guy here, John Jackson, goes out to state that, quote, "This is problematic. The U.S. just executed a drug dealer without any due process," the due process, right? "A trial or any appeals. What is the limiting principle? What other kinds of criminals can we now execute without warning? And what's this intervention? A war? How long? What's the mission?" Of course, ridiculous as that opinion is, I would further like to point out that if you go to this guy's bio, what's the first sentence you read? U.S. veteran of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. What does that mean? You're talking about an American citizen who went over to Ukraine to fight as a foreign mercenary against Russia, which is formally a country we're not in a hot war with, but apparently we're sending a bunch of Americans over there to fight as, these mercenaries. To which I say, this is the person lecturing us on the gray or questionable areas of military force, a literal Ukrainian asset and foreign mercenary. Yeah, okay, buddy. Here, though, is another example. You see this guy, Kenneth Roth, who says, "Drug trafficking is a crime. not an act of war. Traffickers must be arrested, not summarily executed, which U.S. forces just illegally did. Now, I want to make it very clear to everyone, because this is all what they're saying, right? It's supposed to be a police action, blah, blah, blah. That if you guys missed the memo, the very authority Trump is using on this is a legitimate one, which is the designation of Tren de Aragua and these other cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Okay, are you guys missing that? We're not just talking about drug dealers anymore or random petty criminals on the street. These are now classified by the U.S. government as terrorist organizations. Why is that relevant? Because you're about to hear a lot of screeching about the so-called due process or the abuse of war powers or something like that. But the simple truth is this. Post 9/11 specifically, with the war powers that Congress gave to the president at the time to go after Al-Qaeda and other groups, the truth is the president does have, on the legal argument here, pretty unilateral authority to, first of all, designate who is a terrorist organization, and secondly, authorize military action against them. This is, of course, the exact way that Barack Obama dropped some, I believe it was 16,000 bombs a year on Syria without congressional approval, right? Oh, but he designated them terrorists. That's exactly what's going on. He said it was against ISIS. He said it was against other groups there. And interestingly, back then, some of those strikes were controversial. There were due process arguments about that because some of them actually did target American citizens who were abroad, who were killed in the drone strikes, right? But of course, liberals had absolutely no issue with that. And look, here's the thing. You could have a genuine civil libertarian argument, and I'd be willing to talk about that, over the legitimate use of war powers and a general question of post 9/11, do we give the president too much unilateral authority to act with the military? Because initially the founding fathers wanted Congress to be control of who declares war, but now because you can do this like action against terrorists thing, it's kind of a gray area who really controls the military, etc. That's all true, that's fair. But I want you to keep this in mind. That is not the Democrat objection, very clearly, right? The issue has nothing to do with presidential powers or war or anything. The only sole reason that they are mad, simply speaking here, is the fact that the U.S. military in this case is being used in our own hemisphere to defend our own citizens and not some random war abroad. That is quite literally their only objection to it and the only reason they see a problem with it, right? You don't hear these people screaming about the due process of, again, all of the people in Syria that Obama attacked or the people in Somalia and Africa that Bill Clinton attacked. No. But attack people in our own hemisphere who are actually hurting our citizens, that's where it becomes so different. And here's a great articulation of that argument from Stephen Miller in response to all of these silly, ridiculous due process arguments. So take a listen.
Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker. He's indicted in federal court. He's a fugitive from justice in America. As I think you're also aware, there's a $50 million reward for the return of Nicolas Maduro. Not just him, his henchmen have also been indicted. So it is a drug cartel that is running Venezuela. This is a very important point. It's not a government, it is a drug cartel, a narco-trafficking organization that is running Venezuela. And this has been documented in federal court, and indictments have been secured. The people of Venezuela have been suffering and struggling under the reality of a nation that is so rich in resources, so rich in reserves, that is run by Maduro, the head of the cartel that you referenced, the Cartel de los Sols. That is absolutely one of the most ruthless criminal cartels on the planet. And many Americans may not realize that the drugs killing their kids are coming from Maduro, and also the criminal aliens killing their kids are coming from Maduro. So he's sending his drugs, he is sending his killers, his assassins into our communities, and he's working directly with other designated foreign terrorist organizations like the FARC in Colombia and all the Mexican drug cartels. So it's one continuous loop. And for decades and for years, for generations, we used our military to engage in action against terrorists in the Middle East and in Africa, while leaving unharmed the terrorists in our own hemisphere who are responsible for so much more American deaths, so many more American deaths, who have spilled so much blood across the Western Hemisphere, who have bereaved so many parents and families, and who have contributed to such a horrific cycle and just nonstop, relentless surge of violence in our cities. Every major city in America is suffering from cartel violence. Even the U.S.-based gangs are working directly with these cartels. The drugs, the guns, the weapons, the cash, the organization. We've been occupied by cartels for far too long. President Trump is finally allowing and directing the United States military to use its authorities under the Constitution to defend America from the terrorist organizations that have run free for too long in our own hemisphere. Thank you all. Thank you for the question.
On foreign policy.
Right, and again, that's obviously their only contention here, because the military is being used to defend Americans. What a crazy proposition. That's not the way the military has been used for the past several decades, certainly not in most of my life, right? And I understand it's shocking to people to understand, hey, this is actually a more historical form of American foreign policy. We used to care about issues closer to home, Monroe Doctrine, a lot of that stuff. And, well, it is actually okay. It is actually a good thing to use the military in active defense of our own homeland. But again, there you have it. Now, another interesting argument I want to address, because I heard a lot of these so-called national security experts bringing this up in response to the TDA strikes, is the fact that they're trying to dispute that Tren de Aragua and the drug cartels are not legitimate foreign terrorist organizations. To which I first of all say, I mean, in a sense, the classification is already subjective. The government said it is a terrorist organization, so legally speaking, it is. I know you can get into the argument, but that's first of all how it works. Like, Trump is not breaking any laws or violating any of his presidential authority to do what he did. Again, neither did Obama, because the reality is this is the power post 9/11 that's been given to the president. You have a problem with it, change the law, but he's not breaking any law here, right? But the other argument I heard is, well, it's inappropriate or it's unfair to classify TDA as a terrorist organization because they're not really state actors of Venezuela or political actors, because the argument Trump has made for a long time is that, well, the Maduro regime in Venezuela is working hand in hand with the cartels. They're actively sponsoring both the invasion of drugs and the invasion of people, right? The border crisis, the migrant crisis to the United States. And they keep trying to tell us, no, that's not the case. TDA is just like some random street gang that is running around the country. However, I feel like that argument has already been busted, because in the days since, just on September 4th, as you may have heard, 2 Venezuelan fighter jets apparently buzzed over a U.S. warship in a, quote, show of force after America struck those very narco-terrorists, according to CBS.
Venezuela flies jets over U.S. naval vessels again.
Well, I would say they're going to be in trouble. We'll let them know about that. We heard that happen, but it wasn't really over, not like they described. But I would say, General, if they do that, you have a choice of doing anything you want, okay? If they fly in a dangerous position, I would say that you can, you or your captains can make the decision as to what they want to do, all right?
Sure. Sir, how close did they get to the president? You said they didn't go over.
Say it?
How close did they get? You said the planes did not.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but if they do put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shut down.
And the question I have there is, you obviously see Venezuela pissed off that we hit a TDA boat, pissed off trying to send a message back, right? That what happened to the argument that they're not state actors? Again, I thought TDA was not affiliated with the government of Venezuela. So why was the government of Venezuela so mad that we took out a gang of theirs who supposedly they're not on the side of, supposedly they're against, right, the criminals, the violence, and all that stuff in international waters? No, this is clearly a statement by Venezuela that, yes, TDA is connected to us. We are working with them. We are supporting them. And that's why we're mad that you attacked them. Because again, that shows, right, if the Venezuelan government is responding in a military fashion, that TDA is not just some random street gang or some random group of drug dealers. They are indeed, exactly as Stephen Miller is describing, narco-terrorists with a actual connection, with a actual relationship, right, with the government of Venezuela. And yes, indeed, that is who is sponsoring this migrant invasion. With all of that in mind, now let's show you where it gets really good, because Shady Vance points out exactly what I've been saying. He says that killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military, which is completely true. Again, actually harming and killing and poisoning our own citizens. Brian Krassenstein, a infamous liberal influencer on X, however, responds by saying, Killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. So again, I say this argument is ridiculous, okay? They're designated by the US government to be foreign terrorists. Brian Krassenstein loves the Obama administration. By the way, even the Biden administration did a couple strikes against Houthi rebels. Hey, they're citizens of another nation who are civilians, right? No, they're terrorists. Okay, again, who defines what is a terrorist? According to the US government, the US government. These are classified as terrorists. We know this to be the case. Where was the due process? I don't know, for Osama bin Laden. How come we didn't have a trial, right? We should have arrested him and then put him in court and all that. How dare they shoot him? Is this the argument we're going to make? I don't know. But of course, J.D. Vance here responds very simply by saying, I don't give a blank what you call it. There you go. You got to just shut these people up because they're just crybabies. They whine about everything. You know, past 48 hours, it's been, hey, how dare you go after the cartels? How dare you make America safer? How dare you introduce a new rose garden or something? They're always mad at everything Trump does, but, you know, there you have it. And then now, Krassenstein is responding to this by saying, I think this thread tells you everything you need to know about J.D. Vance and the way he views law and order. Now, he's mocking you for being a hysterical crybaby about everything, just to be clear. But anyways, he says, pathetic. He should be impeached for this tweet. That's right. They're calling for J.D. Vance's impeachment because he basically told a liberal influencer to go F themselves. And they're really pissed off about this, and they're big-time crybabies about this. And essentially, there you have it. So new impeachment hoax, guys. J.D. Vance cussed out some stupid liberal on the internet. There you go. There you go. But anyways, guys, with that said, there you essentially have it. I would love to know your thoughts on this broader issue. You know, first of all, what do you think of the military going after the cartel? What do you think of the Venezuelan response that, again, probably clearly shows they are indeed state actors? Let me know your thoughts on all of that. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.